I will say one of the hardest things that as a director, as a first-time director, I have never been in a situation where you're running an entire set and nothing can happen without people coming to you. So like everybody was like, Kedren, where do you want this? Kedren, when do we do this? And Kedren, like, how do you want it? And I'm just like, it was one of the most harrowing experiences of my life. And I jumped out of a plane and swam with sharks in South Africa. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Welcome to this week's As Unexpected podcast, when we talk to C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists about how they lead into the future when the future generally goes as unexpected. I'm Scott Marshall, your host, and my own professional experience has made me a believer that it's not how you show up when all goes as planned, but it is how you show up when things go as unplanned. Given all of their experiences, each of our guests has become very attuned to the fact that the future is not to be predicted. My hope is that this podcast can help all of you become better leaders by building the core leadership capabilities for leading in an uncertain world. Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of As Unexpected. So, of course, every time I open, I say how excited I am to have a guest. I say it again, but this time in a bit different way, because this person, just by reading her LinkedIn profile, just by reading her profile online in other places, I became inspired, and I had not met her in person. There's so much passion and energy and community in the work she's done and continues to do. So I'm thrilled to have you here, Kedren. Welcome to the As Unexpected podcast.
Oh man, I was so happy to be here, Scott. Thank you for having me. That was incredible. That was so great. Thank you.
Of course. So Kedren, we always start off by turning it over to the guest, having them give a bit of background on themselves, and then to talk a little bit about their current work. Would you mind?
Great. Okay. So I was born in DC. My social security number, no, just kidding. No, so I'm from Maryland. We moved around a bit growing up, but the longest that I've spent in my youth was in Maryland. And I grew up singing in church. And I played sports competitively, so many sports. I love all of the sports. I played soccer for the longest amount of time. My dad was a professional athlete, so it's definitely deep in the blood. But growing up, my mother was very concerned with, how we were exposed. My parents did a lot of work and sacrificed a lot and worked their butts off to make sure that we were given certain opportunities. And one of those things that they really wanted to make sure that we were exposed to, in addition to other cultures and other places, which eventually led me to semester at sea, was like going to the theater and being exposed to the arts. So from a very young age, we would go to the theater, and that it was like a seed that was planted, from so young, and this lied dormant. And so I went to college. I started at UNC Greensboro in North Carolina. I didn't know what I was going to do. I studied psychology, and I actually became really passionate about behavioral neurobiology. And I thought I wanted to be a brain surgeon for a hot second. And then I was like, ugh, math, can't do that. So that kind of transitioned me into special education. I started working with children and young adults with autism spectrum disorder. So I was doing in-home therapy. I was teaching in schools. I also grew up nannying, doing the nannying thing, babysitting, right, and started with cousins and all the things. So I've been around children and babies for all of my life. It actually shocks me when I meet adults that have never held a child, and living in New York, I'm meeting a lot of those. And I'm like, what? I thought this was part of the American experience, but that was just, my own blessing and my own journey. So I didn't study acting. In 8th grade, I did a play on a dare. It was like I did that. And then when I was in Greensboro, I took a fine arts course. It was an introduction to acting class, and I didn't tell anybody about it because I was so ashamed, and I was like, what if I'm bad at this? And I literally did not tell anybody. But then the head of the conservatory saw me, and he was like, you're really talented. You should change majors. But it would make me have an extra year of school. My parents were like, we're not doing that, So I stayed on the psychology course, and I wasn't actually that happy down in North Carolina. And I was like, there's no need for us to be spending this much money, if I'm not happy. So I went on semester at sea, fall 2008. Okay. The Bering Sea Turtles, ports out on the fourth floor. Woo woo. Okay. The Ninja Turtles theme song. Yes. Bering Turtles, ports out on the fourth floor. Turtle power. Okay. I'm telling you, it's ingrained, baby. Um, so after I studied abroad, which changed my life, semester at sea is, I want to say like 90% of the reason I am who I am today, like it's just like it's just so built into my fabric as a human being. And then I transferred back and stayed. I finished at College Park at the University of Maryland, still with my psychology degree. And I was still kind of playing sports. I did like competitive rock climbing in school and like some competitive ballroom. I was just always trying to fight somebody. I don't know, like just I was trying to beat somebody at something. And then I auditioned for this musical theater workshop, again, kind of on a whim. And I got in and I was like, oh, damn it, this is actually what I want to do. Like, why didn't I want to be a banker or something so stable? And so I did a community, like student run show right out of school, but I was still teaching. I was still kind of playing sports. And I started teaching full time at a brick and mortar. Like I was no longer going into like families' homes to provide them one-on-one support in that way, as like a behavioral, therapist in that way. And I was actually getting ready to leave the country to go to South Africa. My family had friends in South Africa and they were like, come, we'll get you a job and da 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 da. And I was like, oh, I'm about to peace out, And then I injured myself playing sports. I blew up my knee. I had to have surgery. And my mentor, who I was still taking like just singing lessons from, and he was like, if you want to do this thing, don't leave, don't go. And so I was like, damn, I guess I'm not going to South Africa anymore since I want to do it, which is so terrifying. And I recovered from my injury and he was like, this is how you audition. This is what a resume and your headshot is, da, 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 da. And so as soon as I was able, like as I was recovered, which was like a year after my surgery, I auditioned for my first show and I booked it. And then a year later, I quit teaching full time. And so the DC, Maryland, Virginia area is very rich. It's a very fertile artistic ground. It's like my artistic home. There's so much theater there, so much. I always tell people if you're too overwhelmed, if New York is too much, like just go to DC. You can like make a living there and just make good art with good people. So I'm really proud to call that my artistic home. So I worked pretty much nonstop for 3 years, and which is such a blessing. Like, I worked my butt off for it. I'm talented. Not to kind of, but also I'm so blessed and fortunate. And then I didn't really know what I was going to do. I had like a break for the first time. And my mentor was like, you should think about grad school since you never studied acting. And I was like, no, I'm not going back to school. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then I was in the dressing room doing this show and these other beautiful, talented women, they were talking about their grad school applications. It was like, I remember this so specifically. I feel like it was like December 14th or something. It was December of 2014. And they were like, oh yeah, your application, da, da, da. And I was like, don't y'all have months? And they were like, no, girl, you got 2 weeks if you want to do it. So I applied to like, I think 3 schools on a whim. And then I like walked into like a 4th audition and I got in. I went to grad school in Florida at Florida State, which is a pretty competitive, 3-year MFA conservatory. It was traumatic as hell, to be honest, but I got what I needed to get out of it, and then as soon as I finished, I got that piece of paper and I moved to New York, and it's been a hard road. Like on one hand, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it's like, there are times when it's like, I can't see myself doing anything different, which is like hard, especially because there's so many other things I'm also passionate about that I'm also good at. And I've been working to kind of, figure out how to interweave those things together, especially, as it pertains to paying my bills. But then, you add COVID on top of it, you add the strikes on top of it. It's been a rough time for the industry, as it has been for everybody,
Yeah. There's so much we can explore with that, Kedren.
That was a lot.
Thank you, first of all, for sharing. No, definitely not too much, but there's so much to explore there. First of all, one of my favorite soccer players to watch is Trinity Rodman. I'm not sure if you...
Of course. Come on.
What a phenom. I mean...
Yeah. She's crazy.
If you played soccer...
She's crazy. I mean, the 3 of them are crazy. Yeah, the trio.
Yeah. So I love watching the women's team. Awesome victory in the Olympics. And yeah, she was a big part of that. And so call out to that. Sorry about your knee.
That's all right.
Obviously, the podcast is about things that go as unexpected. You've dealt with a lot of that. You've made choices in the midst of all that. Go anywhere along that narrative that you shared. And if you would, pick out a story that really puts in front of you something quite unexpected. And how
Um,
you showed up for yourself and those around you in the midst of that and move forward.
yeah. Well, there was the time on semester at sea that my mother does not like me to talk about when we were in.
But
when
do I
we
want
were
you to talk about it?
You do, I promise. No, it's just she was like, "You are doing silly things." It was when I bought a one-way ticket out of the port city, and I did not know how I was gonna get back. And the one rule that my mother told me when I went on semester at sea, she was like, "Do not get your behind left." Obviously, she did not use the word behind. Okay, she was like, "You could don't get left," because they were like, "As long as we know that you are alive and okay, we will move on."
Yeah, yeah.
So I remember I had plans to we were in Malaysia and we were in Penang, and I bought a one-way ticket to Kuala Lumpur, and I was going to go with one of my friends, Bobby, who I'm still very close with, to an elephant sanctuary. But then I ended up at somebody's hotel room at the Ritz-Carlton, and then I didn't want to leave, and Bobby was getting up at 3 in the morning. It was just kind of crazy. So all this to say is I had no idea how I was going to get back from Kuala Lumpur to Penang. And it was like a holiday weekend, so everything was closed. Like it was kind of like a ghost city. And I just had to I panicked for a little bit, particularly because I could hear my mother's voice so clearly in my mind. But it was definitely like about breathing, looking up. Sometimes I feel like literally just looking up and seeing around you what's going on, it can make all the difference in the world. Like also spiritually,
Yeah,
like keep your
yeah,
chin up, that kind of thing.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
ended up seeing literally like across the street other people from the program, and I ran to catch up with them, and I was able to get on their bus because they were on an FDP, and and so I was able to get back. That's like a fun kind of anecdote I like to tell. But in terms of something that happened sort of unexpected, I had this really humbling audition. I've had a couple of humbling auditions, but kind of early in my career, there's in the theater there's something called TYA, which is like theater for young audiences. And a lot of people do it, they make their careers out of it, and they love it. And which is so interesting considering how much I love working with children. But
I was going to say, you spent a lot of time with children.
I know, but there is something TYA. I mean, they work you so hard. You got to do like 5 shows a day. Some are like 8 in the morning. I was like, that life is not for me. But I was right. But I was just I went to this audition, and they told you to prepare a story, and I didn't. I kind of just walked in like, no, I got this. Like I work with kids, I can tell a story, and I also like to go first to kind of wrap things up. I don't like to let anxiety build. So I ended up telling this story about like these children who had a beach house and needed to clean. And it was the most like privileged, like I don't like it was just crazy. The point is I was not connecting. I wasn't using my imagination really. I wasn't connecting or being kind of open and compassionate in terms of like just doing something simple and playing, which is like really what this thing is about. And I remember watching these other people again, like I was after the words came out of my mouth, I was like, what did you just do? And then I was able to kind of look up and see, because it was a group audition, and see what these other really talented and just open, warm artists were giving, not only like for the job, but like for each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we need to go home and like sit down with ourselves, because you were not there like with curiosity or like with warmth. And you really just need to kind of like, I took that one on the chin. Like I remember being very kind of, reflective about that, and also inspired by what these artists shared in that moment.
That's beautiful, humbling, but
Yeah.
also beautiful at the same time. This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program for college students and adults on career breaks, sabbaticals, or retired, interested in learning and exploring the world together. Learn more about the Lifelong Learner program at www.semesteratSea.org. I certainly think exactly that there must be these massive similarities between the theater work when you're successful in connecting and being in a leadership position. Like,
Yeah.
how do you show up? How do you connect? How do you understand your audience and what they're seeking from you? And I had never thought about it until you just said that connection between what it means to be on stage
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
connecting to your audience authentically with joy. And what does it mean to be in a position where you really need to engage the people around you?
Absolutely.
Does that work for you?
Yeah. Oh, well, again, as I was saying, like I'm a social butterfly, but being able to connect with other people, whether you're in the room with them or on stage, is a huge part of our job. As an actor, as a performer, I always say, and like other people in the industry, it's like auditioning is like actually 80% of what we do. The skill to audition and the skill to perform are very different skill sets. But then there's the part where you do have to go out and you have to say hello to people and you have to network and you have to put your face in front of them. And a lot of people, some of my classmates, they were like, well, it feels icky. I don't like to do that. But it's like, or there are those people who, even in other industries, they're like, maybe they're working on something big and they don't like to talk about it. They don't like to jinx it or this, that, and the other. And on one hand, I understand that, but I am very much a believer in when you speak things, you speak them into life. And more importantly, when you speak things with people, you don't know how they might be able to support you. And also, like, how you might be able to support them in their endeavors. So if I'm saying like, oh yeah, I'm making this movie about a chef or something, and I don't know, and they're really like, oh, well, I have a location for you. I know somebody who went to culinary school. Maybe they could either be in the movie or be some type of consultant, scripts or produce. Like, there are so many ways in which we kind of cut off opportunities by not being willing to be open and vulnerable and talking about what we're passionate about, what we're pursuing, whether personally or like professionally.
So you had produced a short film.
Yeah.
You produced, directed, and acted. Am I?
That one I didn't really act in. My partner, my creative partner, yes, she was the star. I chickened out. I was like, you can do it. And she was like, only if you direct me. And I was like, okay. But we co-wrote it together. We produced it ourselves. We fundraised. It was incredible.
So tell the audience and me, please, what happened that was unexpected in that whole process and how, I mean, there had to be many, many things.
Yes.
And how did you show up with your partner and yourself when those things happened? I mean, that's a big deal.
Well, we definitely prayed. We prayed and we held hands and spoke over each other. There are many long nights we were on each other's couches, cursing ourselves as well as this industry. We wanted to bring on people that we could trust, that we wanted to be able to pay them their worth. But as first-time filmmakers, it's also like, okay, well, you don't know what you don't know until you get to that moment. I will say one of the hardest things that as a director, as a first-time director, I have never been in a situation where you're running an entire set and nothing can happen without people coming to you. So like everybody was like, Kedren, where do you want this? Kedren, when do we do this? And Kedren, like, how do you want it? And I'm just like, it was one of the most harrowing experiences of my life. And I jumped out of a plane and swam with sharks in South Africa. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was crazy. And we had a dinner break, our lunch break. And I remember sitting catatonic and somebody came up to me and was like, you need to eat. And I was like, I just was thinking about all the things that had to be done. Because we shot in the middle of the night. So we were also fighting daylight. But in the post-production process, I will say that we went through several colorists. We went through, like, there's a specific flow that you have to learn about, that you have to do. Like, you can't do certain types of edits until other people transfer the data so it looks a certain way. And, you communicate with people. Again, you put your trust in folks, and sometimes they break your hard drive. We have an editor. We had an editor in another state. We had to find a different colorist overnight. So it was a lot. We learned we were incredibly resourceful. We learned that our community was a lot bigger than we thought it was. Again, there was a lot of reaching out into just the universe, like putting things on social media, being like, ISO, in search of, but also having these conversations with people who wanted us to succeed, who were in the industry as well, like using their resources as well.
So if I can summarize some of what you said, it's when you hit these hard knocks, these obstacles, these hurdles, whatever metaphor you want to use. First of all, you had your partner, you're clearly a dear friend. Like
that's my sister. Yeah, that's my work wife. Okay,
yeah, like someone who you just had absolute faith in and trust in, and then you reached out beyond this broad network. You had the courage and curiosity to reach out and find people, and you just had this belief.
Yes,
like belief.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people talk about their ideas, they write it down and this, that, and the other. Look, I'm a doer. I'm a finisher. If I start something, I'm gonna do it. And I have other friends who've been like, oh, we should do this and we should do that. I'm like, great, when? when do you want to do it? Like, you can't keep making, there's always going to be a reason to not do something.
Yeah.
And the stars are never going to be perfectly aligned. It's like I'm never going to have X amount of money in my bank account, and this is going to happen in this order. Like, life is just not linear that way. And this woman who I met right before the pandemic, we clicked. She's also from Maryland. We ended up growing up right up the street from each other. But she was like, we just spitball this idea one night, and then we were like, great. So we're going to get it done. And literally we had our first version of the script done that night. And so it's about like, when you say you're going to do something, making sure that you are surrounded by people who are going to hold you to that, but also push you to be even greater. Because when I was thinking about it, I'm like, great, we'll shoot it on my iPhone. And she was like, oh no, bigger and better. Like, the movie, it just grew and grew and grew. And we'll be making our LA premiere like in a few months. So yeah.
Congratulations. That's brilliant. I love it. The other piece that I'm capturing from it is this willingness to stretch beyond what seems reasonable. Not the unattainable, but to stretch yourself beyond what seems reasonable. What I mean by that is you've never done a film before.
Oh my God.
Right? I mean, everything I've read and everything you said so far, you've never done one before.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking just rational, reasonable, like, well, no, because I haven't done that. But what you've said with others is, this may not seem reasonable.
Well, it doesn't matter. Right.
But it's attainable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If we set ourselves to it and we just give it our all.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think there is nothing more powerful. Like, I mean, I am a big proponent of like community and like fellowship. And, earlier in my career as an actor, I, learning about these directors who would work with the same actors over and over and over again. I'd be like, God, like, hire somebody new, like, hire me, like, we know tons of talented people. But now, after doing the film, after having had horrible experiences, just be honest, like, not every job is great. But then also having these fabulous experiences where they've like been life-changing. It's like, oh no, like, we make lists as we go. Like, this person, they're in my village. We are aligned spiritually. We are aligned, like, what we want to do. And I'm not even meaning like, we believe in the same God or something like that. But it's like, we are moving in the same way. We are trying to create the same type of work. We have the same work ethic. And we know that we can be honest with each other because we're going to push each other to be better, to go further, to stretch further, and to not let ourselves be kind of weighed down and prohibited by the doubt and the insecurity and all the other things in the world that are telling us why we can't or why we shouldn't.
I love it. This is a great transition point.
Yeah.
As you know,
yes,
I have a quote for you that I'd like to read from Brian Grazer's book, A Curious Mind, The Secret to a Bigger Life. And this quote, again, based on what I've kind of investigated about you, just seemed to be a great fit. So I'm going to read it to you, and I'd love for you to respond with anything. So the quote goes like this: curiosity is a tool of engagement with other people, but it's also the path to independence of thought. Curiosity helps create collaboration, but it also helps give you autonomy. Yeah.
I love that so much. In grad school, we talked a lot about play and freedom and like being the simple fool. It's like when you do something for the first time and you're like, again, you don't necessarily know what you don't know, but you're like, I'm just going to do it, la, la, la. And then you're successful because you're not thinking about all the things that you don't know. I am excited to make another film because I'm excited to make smarter mistakes. I'm curious about like, looking back and be like, well, why did I know that? And it's like, why would you know that? And so I'm excited to push myself forward. And part of that is because I am curious. We go to school so we can get back to that playful child that we used to be. Like when you watch a baby, they are perfect. These children, when they play with their imagination, it is no holds bars. They are 1,000% engaged. Okay. It is life or death. And as adults, we lose that. And so when I think about curiosity and the freedom that gives us, it also is like, that means you also are stepping out, like in faith, trusting yourself. You are seeking that freedom because you want to learn more. You want to expand yourself beyond what you think you may know or not know about yourself. all of these things that have been handed to us, prescribed to us, right? Whether like as Americans, as men, as women, as, other, like all of these scripts that we've been given, when you decide to take that bold step into the unknown, you open yourself up to a world of often pain, but sometimes, more often than not, expansion and greatness and connection to other people. Because if you're not curious, if you're just staying in your bubble, you're only seeing you're only seeing like-minded things, yourself. You're in a vacuum. And I think that was also something that semester at sea really, really just impressed upon me and like just imprinted on my soul in that way. Like we were abroad when Obama was first elected in 2008, and like seeing what was happening in the States from the other side of the world and all of those different perspectives is something that I will never forget, because you don't think about it, right? Like when we're in it, we're not necessarily thinking about how other people are living and experiencing the world and how what we do necessarily impacts other people.
Yeah.
And so that curiosity is important to really see outside yourselves and grow beyond that kind of threshold, fearful state of like knowing.
There's a lot of quotable material in here, Kedren. Like Kedren Spencer quotes. There's going to be a page on this. I'm going to go back to something you said early in this comments, which was, I want to try it again because I want to make smarter mistakes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
that's Kedren Spencer quote right there, top line. That's powerful. I mean, keep that. That is a powerful statement. We have to push ourselves not to simply be perfect, because that doesn't exist.
Right.
To make smarter mistakes. I love it. Awesome stuff. Hey, Kedren, I'd love if you would just finish with one piece of advice for all the people out there listening. How to live life, how to pursue your dreams.
Oh man, that's okay. Well, one of the quotes that I heard from one of your episodes that has meant so much to me is that it's not about the destination, it's about the outcome. And I'm like literally in the process of, in my life, really trying to be as present as possible in every moment of every day. I'm not thinking about what's happening in the world. I'm not thinking about tomorrow or next week or whatever. I'm just trying to be present because, we always put these expectations on ourselves. They can be very constricting and not curiosity led, right? Not necessarily with the spirit of like possibility. And so I think what I would say to people is that is to be open always, to look out for other people around you. Like, please, like, pick your head up from your phone. Like, there are things happening around you, good things and bad things that we need to work together to prevent from happening. But I definitely would say that if you move forward, like if you have a little bit of choice paralysis or whatever, where there is fear, there is a threshold. And just beyond that is a greater version of you than you could ever perceive. So be curious about those moments when you feel fear rising, because usually that's the direction that you want to head in. And often the best decisions for ourselves are the hardest.
Yeah. Let the fear motivate you beyond the threshold.
Yeah.
That's a great
and talk your stuff, Yeah, talk your stuff. Like reach out to other people. Don't be afraid to talk about things you're doing. Yeah.
Love it. This has been brilliant. I wish we could do it for another 30 minutes. Hey, when I'm in New York City next, I hope we can sit down and have coffee. And please. I won't have my orange mug with me, but
we'll find an orange cup someplace, and I'll make sure to wear my orange sweater. Okay.
Awesome, Kedren. Thanks so much for your time. This has been super fun for me.
Thank you. Next time I'll try and be a little bit tighter.
Don't do it. Keep it going. Keep it flowing.
Take up the space. But thank you, Scott. This was truly a blessing and a blast.
All right.
Bye.
This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program where students visit 10 countries on 3 continents, all while taking 3 to 4 college classes through Colorado State University. See course offerings and upcoming voyage itineraries at www.semesteratsea.org. Thank you for joining this week's episode of the As Unexpected podcast. The viewpoints and opinions of featured guests do not necessarily represent those of the Institute for Shipboard Education or Semester at Sea. Hit the like button, share it with your colleagues, family, and friends, and remember, Be curious, be compassionate, be courageous. That's what it takes to lead as unexpected.